last week I was talking to one of my one-on-one clients, and she said to me, "You know, Wendy, this has never happened to me before, but I just don't feel like writing." So I knew what this was about better than she did, because I have seen this hundreds of times before. Inspiration just isn't there. You don't feel like doing this. I'm a Penguin Random House author who has coached over 500 writers over the past 18 years. So I know a thing or two about getting stuck. By the end of this video, you should know them too. You'll know why not writing has nothing to do with laziness, how to figure out the real reason you're stuck, and practical things you can do to make writing fun again. So let's get into this. For some people, the problem happens when they first start their book. They keep putting off writing. It just can't get started. For others, the problem comes along later in the process. You're doing great, making good progress, and then something shifts, and writing suddenly feels hard. But this happens to just about every writer at some point. What I have learned is that this has nothing to do with laziness. What this actually has to do with is a simple four-letter word, F-E-A-R, fear, in case you're a terrible speller. People don't procrastinate because they're lazy. There's really no such thing as "I just don't feel like it." It might feel that way, but it's your task to figure out why you don't feel like it. What is usually happening is there's something scary about writing, and it's your task to figure out what that is. Last week when I was talking to my client, I started asking her questions to try and figure out what it is she's afraid of. "It feels so daunting," she said. "Why?" I asked her. "I feel like I don't know how to do this," she said. "And why is that a problem?" I asked her. "Because I have a book contract with Simon & Schuster and my manuscript is due very soon." I kept asking her why this was a problem, even when this got ridiculous. Even when she was imagining living under a bridge and being homeless, I still asked her, "Why does this bother you?" Now, this is a trick you can try on yourself. Keep asking yourself why to the answer to your question until you have a light bulb moment. Your real answer might have something to do with the fact that you're scared your mom is going to criticize your writing, or that your daughter might read your sex scene, and that thought of that is just terrifying. A lot of times this fear comes from the thought of people reading your book and thinking that you have no talent, that you're not good at this. And if you go even deeper, that fear of not being talented often has something to do with self-worth. Maybe it's about not feeling loved as a kid. When you're writing your book and putting your most intimate thoughts on the page, it's very easy to confuse your identity with the art you're creating. But this is just art. It isn't you. At some point along the way, you confused love with approval, and putting a book out into the world, especially if it's a memoir, can feel like bearing your soul. And what if people don't like what they see? What does that say about you? Let me tell you right now that this says nothing about you. Let me talk to you about people who do write terrible books, because there are a lot of them out there, but they're not watching this video. How do I know? The people who struggle with the question, "Is my book any good?" are usually the kindest, most talented writers that I work with. I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of writers. The ones who turn in terrible pages actually never ask if their book is any good. And when I tell them that their pages still need work, they seem genuinely surprised. And then they usually don't do the work it takes to make their pages better. And the next time when they turn in pages that they haven't worked very much on, and I tell them, well, this still needs a lot of work, they seem genuinely surprised again. To me, it's not that these people are not afraid of failure. It's that they are so afraid of it that they've created this wall, and they tell themselves that anything they create is good. This, to me, is just a different kind of defense mechanism. In fact, sometimes I think that it is the very fact of doubting yourself that makes your book good. So don't be afraid of self-doubt. Self-doubt might be what it takes to turn you into an amazing writer. I love great literature. I love books that are well written. I love amazing books. I won't waste my time on a book that I don't like. But here's the thing. I don't confuse a book with its author. Some of the authors I really like sometimes write terrible books. Gabriel Garcia Marquez is a great example. I loved 100 Years of Solitude, Love in the Time of Cholera. Chronicle of a Death Foretold? Boring as... Does that mean I think Gabriel Garcia Marquez is a terrible writer? No. I think he's amazing. And sometimes he gets it wrong. And never once have I thought, yuck, what a terrible human being, when reading a book I didn't really like. I didn't have anything against the author. I've never confused a work of literature with the person writing it, and you shouldn't either. Your book doesn't say as much about you as you think it does. Your book is actually about your reader, not you. Yes, you are the creator of this work, the artist who has brought it to life, but if it sucks, it says nothing about you as a person. When my own book came out, I was terrified to talk to reporters, especially when I was going on a live radio show, or even worse, live TV. I got invited on the Late Late Show with Craig Ferguson, but I was so scared that I screwed up my pre-interview and I lost that invitation. I didn't blame the lady interviewing me. If I couldn't talk to her over the phone without shaking, how was I possibly going to sit on a well-lit stage talking to Craig Ferguson? How would I sit in the same seat where Ryan Reynolds had sat, where Tina Fey had been, Steve Carell, Morgan Freeman? I lost one of the biggest opportunities of my life that day. I knew I needed to get over my stage fright when the Memoir engineering system came out and I went on a podcast tour. At first, I was worried that I wouldn't have the answer to a question I was asked, that I would say the wrong thing, that I would screw this up, the way I had the Craig Ferguson show. But then I had this mindset shift. I wasn't on this show to impress people. I was on the podcast to help people. This wasn't about me. And when I went into an interview with this new attitude, I was no longer afraid. I think that when you have this attitude toward your book, you're no longer scared. It's no longer about what the people who read it are going to think about you. It's about what you can offer them. So if you ever start feeling like you just don't feel like writing, think about what it is you have to offer. Now start putting those words down on the page. Getting over your fear of putting your words down on the page can be tougher on some days than others. There are some days when you might just have to let yourself off the hook and not punish yourself about that later. There are days when writing just isn't going to happen, and that's okay. Those are the days I would spend asking myself a bunch of questions to figure out what I was really afraid of. However, before you do that, let me give you 2 tricks that I have learned that usually get me writing on days when at first I don't feel like it. The first trick I learned when I was in my 20s, and I was an ad copywriter for a man named Chuck Bloor. We had a lot of high-profile clients, including Disney, and I was under a lot of pressure to write great scripts. These scripts had to be either really funny or really dramatic. They had to have believable characters, and they had to sell a product. all in 30 seconds. Honestly, it was the best training as a writer I ever had. But the pressure would sometimes get to me and I would go blank. So I lived in Los Angeles, really close to this beautiful neighborhood called Larchmont Village. I'd walk past these huge, beautiful houses and these tree-lined streets, and I would just walk. I wouldn't think about anything in particular. I would just enjoy being there. And after about 10 minutes of just walking and thinking and being, then I would start to focus on the script I had to write. And the ideas would just flow. It felt like magic. Writing became fun again. Several years later, when I was working on my own memoir, I discovered a new technique. I would still walk, which helped me a lot. But I also learned that reading anything that affected me emotionally actually made writing really easy. If I wasn't feeling up to writing that day, I would pick up a novel that I loved and I would just read for a while. Usually after about 5 or 10 minutes of reading, I was so excited about writing again that I couldn't wait to get to the computer and work on my own book. There were a lot of novels I actually didn't finish around this time, but I did manage to get a whole bunch of writing done and actually finished my own book. So, what did I tell my client with the Simon & Schuster contract? Number 1, it's okay if you don't write today. Take the pressure off and just be nice to yourself. Number 2, if it's not going to be a writing day, you have to choose one of the following to do for 20 minutes. Go for a walk or read a book you love. If you do this for 20 minutes and don't feel inspired, you've done your work for the day. What almost always happens way before the 20-minute mark is that writing feels fun again. I hope you find that this is the case. Take the pressure off of yourself and create tiny goals. A final thing I told my client is that just writing a single page per day adds up to 365 pages in a year. Take a deep breath and quit being so hard on yourself. Still filled with self-doubt? Okay, watch this video next to learn what actually makes a book good.